spot than Jim does. I understand that pull works better. And that pull works better, but oftentimes it doesn't give you the volume that you need. So I believe in push and pull. I believe that you should use display advertising that's interactive in nature, and that you should also use engagement venues which use the product, as Jim mentions, or a simile of the product to engage the users. But I think you use both of them. First, I'm going to say, what are virtual world metrics? I've been doing this for 3 years. I developed a platform for the Second Life that tracks activity, who, what, when, and where of avatar traffic, and also events, what do they do, what are they doing, and then I also track what do they say. And the reason I did this is because I was developing some properties for some early adopters, most notably Coldwell Banker and IBM, and it was very important for them to be able to determine return on investment for money spent on these venues. And a couple of them were trying a branding exercise in the case of Coldwell Banker, and others were trying to actually sell product. In the case of IBM, they were selling blade servers and actual pieces of hardware and service contracts. So scanning on a 3D space requires that you have volumetric scanning. It's not like a web page, which has a single two-dimensional representation of the page, which you hit, click a button, or something like that, and that's basically a web hit or a click. And 3D space, you're in the space or you're not in the space. And if you're in the space, are you moving around, etc. So we developed a system for creating scan fields which allow a radius to be tracked. And this is sort of like a spot tag. And there's two different ways that you can do this. If you have access to the server backend, and as all the data is being written, you can actually record that and log that data. A lot of people don't have that deep integration, and they only provide for a level of light integration, which is what I call spot tagging of the 3D space. And if you're familiar with Google Analytics, you sign up to Google Analytics, you get a chunk of JavaScript that they give you, and they say, if you want us to track your pages, include this JavaScript in all of your pages. We do something similar, but we create a range-adjusted 3D scanning sphere, and you can put them wherever you want them. And so some areas you know it's going to have low traffic or you're not really concerned about, you can leave them and not cause lag in your environment, and not cause undue load on your servers, because it's a lot of data that's being collected. If you see a web page, that's one record. You hit the page, that was your impression, and then you moved on, one record. But if you're in a virtual space for 30 minutes and I'm tracking you every minute, that's 30 records. So if I have 50 people who look at my web page, you know, that's 50 records. But if I have, 100 people look at it for 30 minutes, or in a virtual space for 30 minutes, it's like 3,000 records. So you don't want to collect more data than you absolutely have to. So we developed a full turnkey package called vTracker, which I encourage you can read up on it online. And it's a full turnkey reporting package, analytics package, allows you to manage your spot tags, your 3D locations, allows you to create campaigns so you can compare certain sets of activity side by side, like you would with a proper web analytics package. And it's all with a web portal, so you can log in, and it exports PDF, Excel, XML, common limit, etc. So you can take the data with you, slice and dice it however you want. This is basically how it works. We have sensor modules which detect chat, events, collisions, touches, payments, etc., and visits, and it gets fed into our web services, it gets dumped into a database, and then our web analysis application uses that database in the data warehouse. This is overly complicated, but it explains more specifically how it does, and our system scales. We used the metrics for venue tracking and something else we call virtual world experience optimization, which is to take the metrics and to look at the information provided, make a few adjusted changes, and then based on those changes, read the metrics again, and then see if what you changed was better or worse, and then do constant iterative improvement. We call this whole process virtual world experience optimization. And so that's one thing you can do with virtual world metrics. Another thing you can do is to track advertising, what we'll call push advertising. And display-based advertising, but unlike display-based advertising, you can actually touch the sign. So does push work? And the answer is yes, push works, but it's a numbers game. You have to have huge volumes. If you look on the internet, your amount of click-through is measured in the points of 1%, like 0.1 of 1%, half of 0.1 of 1%. Whereas the click-through in the virtual world is like starts at 1%, goes up to 5%, depending on how effective your campaign is. So if you have 150,000 individuals exposed to an ad, and you have 5% click-through, it's still 7,500 individuals. This is numbers. And so in-world advertising can do two things. It can direct you to another in-world venue or sell you something about the virtual world, so it's all sort of contiguous, or it can take you out of world and sort of give you a web experience. So virtual worlds, all of the ones that I know, have various methods of handling volume of traffic. There's things called sharding, which is to basically have copies running on multiple servers, and as traffic comes in, you move them to different servers. And there's like what Second Life does, which is population cap. Basically, once you have a certain amount of people in a certain space, it won't allow any more in. All of these various methods make one problem, and that is you do not have mass market audiences. You cannot have 1,000 people in one place. You just can't do it. And to have mass market number of people, you have to have ubiquitous placement. If one sign is only getting you 50 individuals, well, that means you have to have 1,000 signs to get 50,000 individuals. So when you start to get to those kind of numbers, you start to work into the ubiquitous placement, and you start to get the volume that you need. I'm not going to go over this. Our in-world ad technology is also based on vTracker. It allows us to have a content management system, which will create ads, and then the ads are put into a rotation management where you can make various rotations of various different ads. And you have terminal management. The ad queues can play on various terminals, so you can have one terminal per ad queue, so you have 100 terminals each displaying its own lineup of ads, 100 different ad queues, or you could have 100 terminals all displaying the same lineup of ads. It's very flexible how to do that. And basically you put them on land. It's like an out-of-home. If you're familiar with out-of-home marketing, it's basically billboards and signage display, and that's our model, where you own the land or you own the piece of virtual venue, and you put up signage, and basically that's the model. Everything has a viewable range, which must be configured, and this actually leads into standards. Just because you are close enough to see something in the virtual world may not mean that you can actually work out any detail. For example, if it's a BMW car, you could probably be 20, 30 meters away and still make out that it's a BMW. But if it was writing on the wrapper of a hamburger that says Whopper, you probably have to be right on top of it to see it. So when you're tracking these things, you have to keep in range as an aspect, because viewable range is going to be whether or not they can engage with it. If it's out of range, they can't see it, then they can never engage with it. So we use a different set of metrics. We say that there's engagement time, this is the biggest part, and so Jim was alluding to that with the number of minutes and average visit minutes. And then there are people who are unique. So you may have 100,000 minutes spent looking at the sign, but it was 10,000 unique individuals who made up those 100,000 minutes. And then those two numbers can give you the ratio of about 10 minutes average exposure time, which in fact turns out to be what it is. We've been running ads for millions and millions of impression minutes, hundreds of thousands of unique impressions, and the typical is 8 to 10 minutes average impress time. So if you look at web impression, that's 15 seconds. That's what counts. And if you look at a video game impression, that's also 15 seconds. And so we're not measuring our impressions in seconds, we're measuring ours in minutes. So exposure to push in minutes translates to higher click-through rate. So you have the impressions, unique impressions, and then you have people actually touch a sign. Unlike in the real world, you can click one of these signs, it'll give you something. It will give you information. It will take you to a different URL. It will take you to an in-world virtual venue. So you request, but it doesn't mean you actually did it. It's just an offer. And did it means you went there. You clicked through. You actually hit the website. You hit the virtual world venue location. You responded fully to the ad. So we track all of that. And we also are working with Web Analytics Association, I'd say longer than Jim. And we have been working on virtual world standards for about 2 years now. And I think we'll be releasing something probably at the end of this year or the very beginning of next. And that's all I have to say.
Well, thank you very much. I think that gets somewhat a good taste of what the different ways people are looking at it.